For so long, I thought the only way to overcome my problems was to force myself to do things. I thought motivation can only come from doing things, and gaining momentum will give me motivation. So I would just force myself to do things. I would force myself to go to work even though I felt awful. I was struggling with PTSD and depression. It's like, well, I just need to force myself to get out of bed. I need to force myself to do things and just hope that the problems I'm facing will go away on their own. The issue with that is you're ignoring the main symptom of all of the problems you're experiencing. The main symptom of what you're experiencing with the mental health problems, the depression, the anxiety, the trauma, is cognitive depletion. Cognitive depletion is basically where you lose the ability to make decisions, to think clearly. You have used all of your cognitive resources just getting by, just getting through the day. It's like when you are depressed, when you are anxious, you use up so many more cognitive resources just to do daily tasks, which other people might consider just like a normal part of being human. But when you're depressed, just getting out of bed takes so much cognitive energy and resources. Like all of these simple things use up so much of your cognition that there is nothing left to actually do something worthwhile, to make clear decisions, to act out of your own motivation. So for years, when I was forcing myself to just get through the suffering by doing all of these random things, hoping that the things I was doing would just ease the symptoms I was getting, ease the feeling and the overwhelm of all the depression, anxiety, and trauma, it was perpetuating the suffering, because not only was I ignoring all of the underlying issues, I was then increasing them because of burnout. So cognitive depletion is defined as a temporary reduction in the brain's capacity or willingness to engage in volitional action, self-control, or effortful decision-making after having already exerted mental energy on a prior unrelated task. So for so many years, I was simply depleting my cognitive resources, and I would find motivation and I would do things and I would think, okay, this is it, I'm getting better. But since those were not in alignment, the actions were not in alignment, they were just doing things just to do, which is kind of perpetuated generally in our society, doing things just to do things and never taking rest. It always led to some sort of burnout, some sort of crash out, a panic attack, a depressive episode, a period of intense traumatic flashbacks, because I was ignoring the problem. I didn't even realize that was the main thing I was experiencing until last year, when I went on medical leave and my therapist and I were filling out the paperwork for the company I was taking leave from. And yes, it had like my medical diagnoses on there. It had depression, anxiety, PTSD, but for the reason that I couldn't do my job, like this paperwork, like you do put your diagnoses on there, but you have to answer all these questions of like why those things make you unable to do your job, right? And the main thing, which I had never even heard of before, we put on there was cognitive depletion. I was unable to think and act clearly. I was unable to make decisions for my job. And in a high stress corporate job, obviously that's not really going to work. So this brings us all back to our main point, which, as evidenced by the fact that I took medical leave essentially for cognitive depletion, is that the only way to heal and overcome cognitive depletion is rest. Now, rest is not just sleep. It's not just going to the spa. There are 7 types of rest that heal you from specific types of burnout. There is spiritual rest, mental rest. There is creative rest, emotional rest, social rest, physical rest, sensory rest. I think I might have repeated one of those. But there are all of these forms. So, like, that's why maybe you try to rest, you try to overcome the cognitive depletion just by sleeping and like resting, which is important, don't get me wrong, but it might be not enough. It might be just healing your body when what really needs healing is your soul. You need spiritual rest. You need time doing nothing. You need time meditating and thinking. When people say they can't meditate, what they're really saying is that their thoughts are overwhelming them and they don't want to sit with them. Which, if you avoid meditation, that's only going to continue to happen, because meditation is essentially the opposite of that. When you have anxiety and your thoughts are just going in a circle and going in a circle, and you don't actually address that, your thoughts are just going to continue to go in a circle, and you're not going to ever expand your mind to think in a different way. That's what meditation does. Meditation enhances neuroplasticity. I couldn't remember the word. Meditation enhances neuroplasticity, which allows you to think differently. It creates space in your mind. When you just sit down and sit with your breath and sit with your thoughts, you interrupt the cycle and you create space in your mind for a new way of thinking. When I realized that rest was really just integration, it allowed me to embrace rest as an integral part of my healing journey, of my, journey of self-discovery. Motivation does come through momentum, through taking action. But when you're forcing yourself to take action when you're not aligned, the motivation you then get is not in alignment. So when we think of this in terms of shadow work, Carl Jung would say a lot of our everyday motivation comes from external expectations, from insecurity. So those motivations come from our shadow, from our ego. And without fully integrating the shadow, the motivations we then discover are misaligned with our soul. And there are still moments where I have to go. I just came out of a period of intense rest, and I was really resistant to it, because our systems are so resistant to rest, the way we grow up in this society. So it's really hard to accept that the only thing you can do is rest, and there's nothing you can do until you rest, because it feels helpless, but it's not. It's such an important phase of learning, of changing, of transforming. And I think there's still I have to convince myself, and sometimes it takes a really long time, it takes weeks till I can understand oh, I need to rest. I need to stop doing. We think we're going to find the answers through taking action. And I'm not saying that's not always the case, but every sense of a new idea or new motivation or inspiration I have found was during a time of rest. Going back to Carl Jung, he saw rest as a necessary part of shadow work, as a necessary part of shadow integration. A blurred sense of self. You cannot act clearly from a blurred sense of self. And this is not me telling you that you need to know everything before you take action. It's telling you that you at least need to know who you are and have a clear foundation of who you are before you take action. Because if you take action with a blurred sense of self, you're still acting from insecurity. You're still acting from what you think people want from you, from how you think people want you to act, and it's not truthful. We need to tell ourselves that a million times before we truly understand it, because we think we just want the end result. We think we want the love, the deeper connection. We think we want the deeper feeling of success, but those things can only be felt deeply within our soul if it's because we're being accepted and loved and appreciated and recognized for our true self. true growth is like balancing opposites, the unconscious and the conscious, the light and the dark. I've spoken about this before, and this is very Jungian, but it's like, it's not choosing one over the other because you think that's better. It's not choosing all of the light aspects within yourself because you think that's what people want to see. It's creating this dynamic flow and balance between each of them. I am who I am because of my shadow aspects, because of the shit I have gone through. And until I use that key wisdom from my shadow, from my pain, from my suffering to create and enhance my life, I'm never going to find what I want, because those things made me who I am. I speak about post-traumatic growth all the time, but like, just to affirm you, if you're watching this, the shit you have gone through is no joke, and like, it makes you super powered. And we don't understand this for a while because when we go through trauma, it profoundly like disrupts everything, and at first it makes you feel weak. It makes you feel like there's something wrong with you. It makes you feel like you have been hurt because you are rejected and not a part of the world. So many deep feeling things, right? But when you overcome the first step of like healing, which takes years, took me about 8 years. When you overcome that, you realize that all of the shit in your life that you were ignoring, all of the pain, was such profound wisdom that is going to allow you to create yourself, to create your life with such a deep level of understanding that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to receive. It's like the balancing of opposites again. When you go into that dark hole, you come out of it with such wisdom and understanding of the light. The most profound realizations I have had about myself and my life did not come from doing anything. They came from sacred rest, from sacred pause, right? From recognizing emptiness as a sacred part of the journey, from recognizing that emptiness is the opportunity for me to create everlasting, fulfilling abundance that is not dictated by what anyone else says, that is not dictated by society, but it's dictated by what I want and what I feel. Because if you are out of the nothingness, if you are creating only what society wants, it's still going to be empty because there's nothing of you in it. Once I was able to truly explore every toxic trait I have when I was in pause, it allowed me to truly understand and appreciate those traits about myself as efforts to help myself. And once you do that, you can so quickly and quite simply reframe them and reintegrate them into putting that effort towards your true self, towards your true soul. It's crazy because like, I've ended up in this place in my life by truly just like following the map of my soul, and like where I am today is it's just I do find it amazing sometimes, even though I still like find myself with all the problems I kind of always had and like all of this darkness that I've always had, but like I just feel more free, you know, and no one led me here. Like I actually kind of did the opposite of all of the advice I received, and I stopped asking for advice, and I was only letting me advise myself. I was only letting my soul advise me. And a lot of people in my actual life don't really know much about my life right now because I actually had to separate myself from receiving all of these expectations and projections and judgment on myself and my life, and I had to just let myself guide me, which is really hard. And honestly, I think all of the trauma I went through was like the only way I was able to do that, because the trauma I've been through has led me to such hyper independence, sometimes in a negative way, right? But it also, that has been integral to like leading me to like only really be able to trust and rely on myself. So it gave me a leg up in the game because I spend so much time by myself. I spend so much time in my head and thinking and understanding and integrating and not really listening to what anyone else says, but just trusting myself. And that's a balance too, of like balancing whether only listening to yourself and whether that hyper independence is coming from ego or coming from your true soul. That's a balance too that I struggle with, but perhaps we'll get to that in another video because that seems like a hefty topic. For now, I just want to enjoy our little time out in this natural oasis. Thank you, Mother Earth. I think that's all I'm going to talk about today. So if you enjoyed this video or this topic, please let me know in the comments how it resonates with your own life. This is my new channel. This is my new discussion type channel where I'm going to, start discussing more deeper topics regarding mental health and psychology and philosophy and just like my own life diaries, because I started on my other channel, which kind of became really just specific for spiritual healing and Reiki and channeled messages. So I was starting to do discussions over there, but was like, I want to separate this because I'm really finding fulfillment in this and I want to create a separate space for it. So if you are interested in Reiki and spiritual energetic healing, you can go to my other channel, which is now Purple Sight Healing, and this is Purple Sight. If you want one-on-one personal healing services, you can go to my website, purplesightshealing.com. Otherwise, I will leave you there. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I love you.